Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is day 11 of AWS Zero to Hero series, and in this video we will deep dive into the concept of AWS CFT, which means we will deep dive into the concept of cloud formation templates. So cloud formation templates basically are used to create infrastructure on AWS, and they implement the principles of IaC, which means they implement the principles of infrastructure as code. Don't worry if you don't understand what is IaC, if you don't understand or if you haven't heard about CFT before. That's what we are going to do in today's class, where we will explore the concept of cloud formation templates. We will try to understand what exactly is IaC and how cloud formation templates implement or follow the principles of IaC. We will try to understand the difference between AWS CLI and AWS CFT. Then we will see the characteristics, features, and what are the different components of this CFT, right? So there are different components and there is a way of how to write this CFT, which we will try to understand. And there are some very good features as well, such as drift detection, updating. There is a concept called stacks. So we will try to understand these things. And then I'll share you some very important tips and tricks that I use while writing this cloud formation templates. So I'm very sure this will also help you to write cloud formation templates very easily and in an efficient way. Then we will do a practical demo with all of these learnings about cloud formation template, features, characteristics. We will try to do a practical demo and create infrastructure on AWS. We will do that live, in today's class. And finally, we will also learn about the comparison with Terraform, because it is often asked in interviews, do you use Terraform or do you use cloud formation template? So I'll explain you in a very detailed way when should you use cloud formation templates and when you should use Terraform. So this is going to be a real good learning session. I hope you have understood till now that we are going to cover a lot of aspects. So please watch this video till the end. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Also share it with your friends and colleagues. Let's jump onto the video and start with the topic for today, that is CFT. Like I told you, CFT basically stands for Cloud Formation Templates. Basically, it is a template that helps in cloud formation. What is our cloud in this case? We are talking about AWS. So cloud formation templates are templates that help us in the cloud formation of AWS. That is, in creating the resources, managing and updating the cloud infrastructure on AWS. So you might ask me that, okay, there are other tools like AWS CLI that we have learned in last class. And you told that AWS CLI can also be used to manage and create infrastructure on AWS. So how are they different and why should I learn about the concept of cloud formation templates? So that's a very good question, and the answer to it is AWS CFT implements the principle of IaC, which CLI does not. So what is this IaC? Like I told you, IaC stands for infrastructure as code. So if you are new to DevOps, then you might be finding this very unique, infrastructure as code, because usually we write code to create applications, right? Whether you are a Java developer, Python developer, or if you are in your college, basically you write code to create some applications. You write Java code to create a Java app. You write Python code to create a Python app. But what infrastructure as code says is, no, write code to create infrastructure. It's very interesting, right? And this concept of infrastructure as code makes CFT a choice, makes CFT a tool that should be used instead of AWS CLI. There are cases where AWS CLI is also very, very important. I'll talk about that. But first of all, let's talk about infrastructure as code. So till now the concept is clear, right? Infrastructure as a code is a concept where you write code to create infrastructure. But there are some very important principles of it. Okay, so even in CLI, you are writing code to create infrastructure. You are just passing some parameters to AWS CLI to create infrastructure. But why is it not a IaC tool? So there are some principles of IaC. Basically, I'll explain you in a very, very simple way. What are these principles? The principle says that any tool that is an IaC tool, right? If you want to build a new IaC tool, let's say that I want to build a new IaC tool called Abhishek. Then what this tool has to do is this tool has to act as a middleman between user and one or multiple cloud providers. It's up to the IaC tool if it wants to submit, if it wants to support one IaC tool, one cloud provider. For example, CloudFormation templates, they support only one cloud provider, that is AWS. Azure Resource Manager, they support only one cloud provider, that is Azure. Whereas tools like Terraform is also an IaC tool, but they support multiple cloud providers. So it is up to the implementer, or it is up to the tool whether they want to support one or multiple cloud providers. But in general, IaC tools should act as a middleman between user and cloud provider if user submits a template. Okay, so understand here carefully. In terms of IaC, users have to submit some templates. So these templates can be YAML files, these templates can be JSON files, or anything that is declarative and versioned in nature. Okay, so any template that is, or any templating language that is declarative and versioned in nature has to be submitted by the user to this tool. It can be Terraform, CloudFormation template, Abhishek tool, or anybody who is watching this, they can write their own tool as well. And what this has to do is it has to take this input and it has to convert this template to a language that the cloud provider understands. Usually the language that cloud provider understands are the API calls. Okay, because cloud providers are basically applications, right? So if someone has to create some resources on them, then basically the language that they understand is API calls. We discussed about API calls in the last class. So CFT also does the same thing. Okay, so CFT implements infrastructure as code principle, and it only targets AWS. It does not support any other cloud provider. So in terms of CFT, what user does is user submits either a YAML or a JSON. These are the only things that CFT supports. So CFT supports either a YAML templating or it supports a JSON templating. User submits any of them to AWS CFT, which is a service on AWS, right? So I'll show you how to use this service. Basically, it's a service on AWS. When you submit this template to CFT, then it converts your template that is declarative and versioned in nature to API calls. Don't worry if you don't understand declarative and version. I'll explain that in a couple of minutes. But at this slide, or in this slide where we are, just understand what is CFT doing. Okay, you don't need to understand anything more than that at this point of time. Like any other IaC tool, AWS CLI also implements the principles of IaC, where it acts as a middleman. It acts as a middleman that follows the principles of IaC, and what it does is it will ask the user, hey user, you can give me either a YAML file or you can give me a JSON file. I'll take the input, I will read the input, and I will convert your input into AWS API calls. Why only AWS API calls? Because CFT only supports AWS. Every cloud provider has this kind of tool like CloudFormation template. Azure also has something called as Azure Resource Manager. Okay, it's out of the topic, but just to explain. And there can be IaC tools which supports multiple cloud providers as well. The best examples are you have Terraform, you have Crossplane. So these are the infrastructure as code tools, but they support multiple cloud providers. Okay, so this is the concept. Now I hope what CFT is doing is clear. What is left to tell you is the principles of IaC. When I explained you, I told them that it has to be declarative in nature, right? Sorry for that. Yeah, I told you that it has to be declarative in nature and it has to be versioned in nature. Now, what exactly this means? So, versioned, I think most of you understand. If you understand the concept of Git, then you understand what exactly version means. Version means that you can take these templates and you should be able to store these templates in any Git repository, or you can store them in S3 buckets or any other places. And what should happen is you can go back and you can trace the changes. What were the changes 10 days ago, or what were the changes 5 days ago to these templates? That is fine. I mean, that is the principle of version control system. But what is declarative? Declarative means, if you want to understand declarative in one single line, declarative states that what you see is what you have. Now, what does this mean? What you see is what you have. What exactly that means? That means if I am looking at any declarative template, whether it can be Jenkins declarative pipelines or it can be this CloudFormation templates that are written in YAML files, when I look at the template, the same thing should be available on the AWS infrastructure. Okay, so by looking at the template, by reading the template, I should understand directly that, okay, so these are the resources that are available on AWS. So if you are using CloudFormation template to create VPC plus route tables plus load balancer plus EC2, then I should be easily able to read this template directly. By looking at the template, by reading the template, I should understand, okay, so when I execute this template, these are the resources that will be created. So it should be in a very simple way, and it should be that easy that anybody can perform code review on these templates. If you are using Git repositories, right, so you can perform code review, you can perform auditing and many such features. So that is a concept of declarative and version. If you still did not understand, don't worry. When we do the practical part of CFT, you will by yourself say that, hey Abhishek, CFT is very simple to write, and now I understood what is declarative and why CFT is very easy to write. Now, if someone asks you in interview, when do you use CFT and when do you use AWS CLI, then you should be able to answer that when should you use CFT and when should you use CLI. Then you can simply mention that you as a DevOps engineer use CLI when you want to execute some short, or when you want to perform some quick actions, right? So like, let's say someone asks you, Abhishek, can you quickly give me a list of S3 buckets that are available on the AWS account? Then if you start writing a template and you submit this template to the IaC tool, and it has to convert that to the API calls and give you the action back, then it will take you a lot of time, right? So in such cases, CFT is not preferred. Whereas when you have this quick short actions, or when you want to write a simple script, or when you want to use this thing in your code somewhere, like probably you're writing code related to AWS, and inside this code you want to get some details about your AWS resources, then CLI is the preferred thing, right? So this is what you will say in the interview as well. For quick and short actions, I'll use CLI, whereas I will use CFT when I want to create actual resources, like if I want to create 2 resources, or if I want to create 3 resources, or similarly if I want to create huge stacks, then in such cases I'll use CFT, right? So till now I hope everything is clear. Now we will move on to understanding the features of this CloudFormation templates, and I'll also explain you the format of it, right? So don't worry, we will do the demonstration as well, but before demonstration you should understand the concept very well. So going back, like I told you, if we are talking about this AWS CloudFormation templates, it supports both JSON and YAML. Now you might ask me, Abhishek, okay, it supports both, but what should I use? So if you ask me in one line, then I will say that if you are learning CloudFormation templates new, then go with YAML, because YAML is most widely used in this DevOps world. Whether it is Kubernetes or whether you're using Ansible, you basically use YAML, and there are some good advantages of YAML. Let's say you are writing these YAML files, it supports commenting as well. Like, when you are writing 100 lines of YAML file, for each line of YAML file, you can say, hey, I'm writing this line. Like when you are writing some simple code, you add comments to the code, right? Whereas JSON does not support commenting. So when you work as a DevOps engineer, you mostly work in a team, and it is very important to add comments to your code so that anyone who looks at your code, they can easily understand, oh, okay, what is this code, what exactly is this. And YAML is more readable as well. The reason is that YAML basically depends on indentation, whereas don't worry about the spelling. Whereas JSON actually depends upon the curly braces. JSON basically depends upon the brackets. So sometimes this will be hard to read. So YAML is like kind of Python, where you can easily read it, because it separates one block of code from other using the indentation but not the brackets. And YAML is also less complex. So these are the advantages of using YAML, and mostly teams use YAML for writing the CloudFormation templates over JSON. But let's say there is some team who traditionally have been using JSON, and they have good expertise on JSON, then yeah, they can also use JSON. There is no uh, restriction that for CloudFormation templates you cannot use JSON. But these are the limitations. If you are using JSON, then you cannot do commenting. They have to definitely go through the code and understand what is written in the code. Like if you have a comment, you can simply understand the overview of the code, right? So if I have 10 lines, before the 10 lines, I can just add a comment saying that, hey, this code is used to create EC2 instance, or this code is used to create 10 EC2 instance. So that thing is not feasible with JSON. So again, readability, indentation, these are the things. So I hope that thing also clear now. If you want to use CFT, then you have two options, JSON and YAML. If you ask Abhishek, then Abhishek would suggest YAML files. Okay. And the other thing is the features of it. Like I told you, CFT has features not just about creating infrastructure. Like creating infrastructure is the primary goal of it. But along with creation of infrastructure, what CFT also supports is drift detection. So drift detection means, let's say today you created an EC2 instance. So let's say you created EC2 instance plus S3 bucket using one CloudFormation template. And tomorrow there is one DevOps engineer in your team. Unexpectedly, they went to the AWS UI and they modified something in the S3 bucket. Okay. Let's say when you created the CloudFormation template, you have enabled versioning. But some person who has access to this S3 bucket, they have disabled the versioning. And this is unintentional change, or let's say this change is not wanted change. Okay. So you should not make this version disabled on this S3 bucket, but it has happened. So what CFT can do is, if you go to the CFT, you can write some cron job, or you can periodically go to the CFT, and in CFT there is an option called detect drift. So using this feature of detect drift, you can click on this button and CFT will take some time and explain you that, hey, I noticed that someone has modified something on your infrastructure that you created through CloudFormation template. So that you can also go there and you can see what exactly is the difference, and you can fix the difference immediately. And you can take the necessary action. Either you remove the permissions of that person, or you can do anything that you want. So along with creation of infrastructure, one good feature of CloudFormation templates is it helps you in the detection of drift. Now, before we go to the practical, one final concept that I want to explain you is, okay, you might ask that, Abhishek, I know that I have to write the templates. So let's say I wrote the template on my personal laptop. I wrote this as a YAML file. And you told me that there is basically a service on AWS which is called as AWS CFT. So how should I take this YAML file and submit the YAML file to CFT? So there is one thing on the AWS CFT that is called as tags. Okay. So what you need to do is you should go to the CFT. You can either go through the CLI or you can go through the UI. It's up to you. So even CFT can be implemented using CLI, or CFT can be implemented using UI, or you can also put this templates in some Jenkins or somewhere, and you can also run the CFTs from there as well using the CLI. But okay, now let's restrict our topic to UI so that I don't confuse you. Basically, you can go to the AWS UI, and what you do is inside the CFT service, there is something called as stacks. So you should just go there and say that create stack. And when you create stack, you can basically import this YAML that is in your personal laptop. And that way you will submit the CFT to the AWS CloudFormation template, or the template that you have written to the CloudFormation template. So this is the entire life cycle of how you do it. And inside the CFT, there is basically a structure. Like, we have been talking that, okay, Abhishek, you need to write, Abhishek is saying that you have to write a template that is in YAML or JSON. But what exactly goes into this? This is very important, right? You are saying, Abhishek, that you need to put that in YAML, you need to put that in JSON, but what exactly I have to put? Okay, so CFT has a proper structure on, what are the different components that you write in the YAML file, and all of these resources or all of these components are not mandatory. Okay, so firstly, for example, when you write a YAML file for the CFT, or when you write a JSON file for the CFT, the basic components are, I'm listing out here. Now, don't worry if it gets overwhelming, because like I told you, I'll show you some tips and tricks. Using the tips and tricks, you can easily write the CFTs. So firstly, you will write the version of CFT. And this is a standard thing. You cannot change the version. There is only one version for CFT. Then you provide the description. What exactly is this CFT? Then you provide metadata information, like who is the owner of this CFT, or if you want to add some things to the metadata, you can do that. Then you will put some parameters. So parameters are basically like, let's say you want to pass any variables to this CFT during the runtime, right? So you can use some parameters, just like we pass it to Jenkins. Then you can define some rules. Rules are basically for, let's say you want to validate the parameters that are submitted by the user. I'll give you one basic example for rules here. Let's say that if this is a prod environment, or if this is a production environment, then the variables that you are submitting should be of a specific naming convention. This is a basic example, right? Like I told you, whenever you are creating in the S3 buckets class, I told you, when you create S3 buckets, you follow a specific order, right? You follow a specific naming convention. So let's say the writer of this AWS CFT, in the parameters, what they did is that they said that the name of the S3 bucket has to be test.123.example.com. Then using this name, you are not able to understand. I mean, you will not be able to understand if this parameter that is passed is asking to create S3 bucket in production environment or staging environment. So you can say in the rules that, okay, the resources should have a proper naming convention. If you are passing the parameters, then this parameter should have a proper naming convention. So these kind of things you can evaluate in the rules. Then you have mappings. Mappings are nothing but assigning the parameters to variables. You are mapping that thing. Then you can add some conditions. Then the only mandatory thing of the template is this specific section that is called resources. Even if you don't put any of these things that we have discussed till now, you can still write the CloudFormation templates. The only mandatory thing of CloudFormation templates is the resources section, right? Only resources is a mandatory field in the template. Even if you don't add any of these things, still your CloudFormation template will work. What is resources? Resources is a place where you define what exactly you want. Do you want EC2 instance? Do you want S3 bucket? Do you want whatever resources that you want? You put the details here and the parameters required for the resources. Finally, you can also define outputs for your template. So this is the entire structure. Now I will take you through the practical process. I'll show you in the documentation of the CloudFormation template. Each and everything is very clearly mentioned. You don't have to worry about it. And when we write this CloudFormation templates, you will understand it further that, okay, there might be multiple things here, but it is very, very simple to write. Okay. So I'll give you that confidence in the next 15-20 minutes. So please watch the video till the end and also try to perform the demonstration that we are going to do. We will use Visual Studio Code today, and I will show you the plugins as well that I have promised. Okay, so I've logged into my AWS account. Before I go to this services section and search for CloudFormation and show you that through the AWS console, I would like to take you through the official documentation of AWS CFT, because this is one of the best documentations that you can come across for any AWS service. The reason why I'm saying is, okay, just go here and search for AWS CFT. And this is the first URL that you get. Click on that button. This is the complete documentation. The reason why I'm saying this is the best documentation is because you have everything here. The theory part, there are a bunch of examples. You can technically copy paste a lot of examples from here as well. And each and every detail about what goes into the CloudFormation template, what is the topology, what are the properties of CloudFormation template, everything you can find here. So let me take your attention to that. If you go to this documentation, you will find a section called working with templates. And this is where exactly you have to focus, because if you go to this section, working with templates, you have template formats, right? So template formats gives you bunch of examples for you to understand how a template is written. Because firstly, you need to get this idea. After that, there is also a section called template anatomy, which explains what each and every property in the template is. So firstly, I'll explain you a sample template. So here, this sample template is for creating an EC2 instance. Okay, so this sample template is creating an EC2 instance in the default VPC. So if you are a newbie, if you want to just play around with AWS, you can directly copy paste this thing and you can also try it. Of course, you have to change the key value pair. And if you want to use any AMI, you should also change that. But you can technically use this CloudFormation template. But what is in this? Firstly, AWS template format version. So this is standard. If you see here, the last time it changed is 2010. So from last 13 years, the version is same. So you can technically keep it for any template that you are writing for any project in your DevOps team. You can as this use it. Then you have description, where you have to define what exactly is this. So whenever you are writing a CloudFormation template, right? So you need to define what exactly is this template. If not, 20 days back, even if you, sorry, after 20 days, even if you look at this template, you probably might not understand. You have to go through the code and read. Instead, if you write a couple of lines here, for you or for any other person in the team, it will be very easy to understand. Then you have resources section as part of this template. But usually, if you go to template anatomy, you can find the entire format. Okay, so what is the entire format? Whether it is JSON or YAML, let's pick up one. So in the YAML, firstly, template format version, as we discussed, then description, then you have metadata. So what goes into metadata is basically, who is the author of this template. You can say for which team you are writing this template, for which project you are writing, you can add such details. Then comes the parameters. Okay, so what is parameter? Basically in the CloudFormation template, as I explained you in the theory part, the mandatory field is only resources, right? So if you just write this section, resources, CloudFormation service will understand through this what exactly do they have to create. If CloudFormation looks into this specific template, it understands that, Okay, so type of the resource that you are trying to create. Inside the resources, you can create multiple resources, like for example, EC2 instance, S3 bucket, whatever you would like to. In this case, inside the resources section, there is one specific thing called EC2 instance. And how does CloudFormation understand? CloudFormation does not understand with this line, but it understands with this specific line, right? What is type? Here you can give any name. Okay, so inside the resources, you can practically add 100 resources as well. For each resource, it starts with the name of the resource. So my EC2 instance does not mean that you are creating an EC2 instance, but what defines you are creating an EC2 instance is this specific line. Okay, so even you can put this as my EC2 instance, and here in the type, if you change AWS S3, then CloudFormation will think that you are creating a S3 service. So what is the one that CloudFormation reads? This specific thing. And these are the parameters for the service that you are creating. Okay, so then you might ask, but Abhishek, then why do I have this line? This line is important because in YAML, what you are trying to say, the template or this CloudFormation service is under this resources uh, key. Okay, under this resources key, I will place a array, or I'll place a slice of resources. Okay, so inside this resource one, you can say this is one resource, then you can add one more resource, you can add one more resource, and first line indicates the name of the resource, but actual type is mentioned in the second line. Okay, don't worry, when I show you in the Visual Studio Code, I'll explain this very clearly. Perfect. So what I was saying is resource is the only primary field. But what if I want to, instead of placing the image ID like this, I want to use this same template for 10 teams. Okay. If I want to use this same template for 10 teams, what I can do is I can parameterize the image ID. That means instead of mentioning the image ID here, what I can say here is, okay, image ID, take this when you actually run the template. Okay, so during the runtime, I can populate this image ID using a parameter. Okay, so what will happen with that? I can use the same template for anyone who has AWS EC2 instance. Only thing that would change is image ID. Let's say you want to change instance type also, then you can parameterize this as well. You want to change key name as well, you can parameterize this as well. Okay, so parameters are used in that case. Then you have rules for the parameters. What is this rule section? This is rules for the parameters. For example, let me say we will take the same example here. You are creating an EC2 instance. Okay, so here you have defined the type as T2 micro. Let's say you have parameterized this. Okay, and you shared this template across your organization saying that, hey, as a DevOps engineering team, we have written this template. Now anybody who has access to AWS EC2, they can use this template and they can create the resources. Let's say that is what you have done. Now, one person, what they have done is, instead of using T2 micro, they use T2 X large. Similarly, one more person did it. One more person did it. But actually, the requirement is only T2 micro. What will happen is your AWS cost will go rocket high. So in the rules, even if you are sharing with multiple people, what you can do in the rules is you can define specific set of things saying that this field instance type should only be T2 micro or T2 medium. If anyone submits above that, reject that template request, right? So that way, as a DevOps engineer, you can handle the rules for the template. Then you have mappings. Mappings is basically like if you parameterize this thing, right? Let's say you have parameterized this section called instance type, and you need a variable to assign this parameter, right? So whenever we are saying this instance type, to assign this instance type, uh, someone is declaring this T2 micro, and if they want to pass to your template, then inside the template, you have to read it. So for reading it, you need a variable. And what this mapping section does is it will map a variable with a parameter. Okay. Then you have conditions. Conditions, I think all of us know. Basically, let's say you don't want to, if someone is trying to execute this template in a production environment, you want to say that, hey, this template is only for production, dev and staging platform. Okay, then what you can do is you can take a parameter from them and say that on which environment are you using this template. If they reply as prod, or if they reply anything other than dev and staging, you can say that okay, our condition is to only execute this for a production environment, so ignore. For now, ignore about transform, because it requires some kind of understanding with cloud compute services, sorry, serverless compute services. So we'll come back to this later in future classes. Then you have resources. This is the only mandatory field, like I told you. So if you even look at this template, everything is inside this resources only, right? All the other things are nothing. They are just adding some parameters, or they're just adding some description details. But why they are important is because when you work in a team, when you work as a group, then if I'm writing template, that has to be understood by everyone. For that reason, to keep this standardized, we use all of the other things, but the only mandatory thing is this resources. And inside these resources, you can add group of resource. Okay, so like inside this resources tab, you can add 10 resources. One is for EC2 instance, one is for S3 bucket. So this name indicates like this is the object here. Inside this object, you can provide the configuration of your resource. Again, you can put one more object for S3 bucket, and you can add configuration for your S3 bucket. I'll show you that. Perfect. Then outputs. Output is basically for you to define what kind of output do you want. For example, do you want output for, if you are creating this EC2 instance, I want the output as what is my instance ID. I want output as what is my, like AWS CloudFormation will take this template, convert this into AWS API and give me the output, right? But I just want specifically the, let's say, public IP of my created EC2 instance. Then I can add such things in the outputs and it will give me the specific output. Okay, so if you want to read more about these things, then go to this template anatomy section, and you have each and everything mentioned in detail. Like what is resources, let's say. You can scroll down and search for this resources section. You will find the description. Now this is about the documentation, and you can explore more things here. You can understand some examples. You can see the troubleshooting documents, because everything cannot be covered in a video. What I'll highly recommend is, after watching this video, please go through this documentation so that you can master and you can, like, do everything with respect to CloudFormation templates and learn them. Now let's switch our gears to the AWS console, right? Because we have discussed enough. Now I'll show you how to write the CloudFormation templates and how to execute them. So I will explain this in terms of a person with zero knowledge. Let's say you have zero knowledge now, and we want to execute this CloudFormation templates. Okay, so what you will do first is just go here, search for CFT, that is CloudFormation. Sorry, you should not be searching for CFT. Even if you search for CFT, you will get it. But the fundamentally name of the service is CloudFormation. The templates that we are writing are CloudFormation templates. So search for this CF or CloudFormation. You will get this. This is the user interface for CloudFormation service on AWS. Similar to user interface for EC2 and all the other services, you have user interface for CloudFormation as well. So first thing that you would see is create stack. What is a stack? As I explained in the theory part, stack is the one that implements the templates. Okay, so when you write a template, you have to submit that to a stack, and stack will convert your template request to the API using the CloudFormation service. Okay, so here, when you create stack, what is it asking? Prepare template. Do you use, I mean, is your template already ready, or use a sample template, or create template in designer? Now, what are these options? For now, our template is not ready, right? So I'll come back to this thing. Let's say you don't know how to write a template. So let's ignore this option. Use a sample template. If you click on this one, then AWS CloudFormation has bunch of sample templates, but that is of not much use. More than this sample templates, you can actually refer the CloudFormation templates documentation itself, where you have example for each and every service. You can just click on this template reference, like I showed you, and you can go to any specific resource that you would want to create, and let's say S3 buckets or EC2 instances, you can find from here. So did I show you this one? Okay, let me take a moment and show it one more time. Like if you go to this section, template references, you have all the resources on AWS examples here. For example, just click on this option, resource properties, and let's say I want to create an EC2 instance. So if I keep scrolling down, then I'll find an option. These are all the AWS services, right? So Amazon EC2 is one service. So if I go here, then for Amazon EC2, yeah. So what I want to create is this documentation is asking. So let's say I want to just create an EC2 instance. I'll click on this option and I'll get the entire syntax for the documentation so for the EC2 instance. Of course, you might be thinking why there are so many parameters. So it is giving you list of all the parameters. You can ignore what parameter you want. Okay. And you can take only the parameters that are required. I'll show you. Don't worry about it. So what we will do is we will also ignore this option because this is not of much use. What is other option called create template in designer? If you click on this one, this is a very interesting one, and this is designed for the beginners. Okay, let's say you have just started it and you don't even know Visual Studio Code, you can't write YAML files in your local. So what you can do is click on this option, create a template in designer, and click on this option. Here you will go to a page where this is basically a diagram, and if you put, or you can assume it as any uh, tool, as a drag and drop tool. And if we want a code for writing S3 buckets, I want a cloud formation templates for S3 bucket. What I can do is I can just come here, scroll down and search for S3, because S3 is a very simple one. Let's take S3 as an example. Okay, so S3 is here. I want to create a bucket, for example. So I can just drop this bucket here. Okay. And if you see here, the code is populated. This code is currently available in JSON format. If you click here, you will get the code in YAML format. This is the code for the CloudFormation template. And of course, they did not add anything related to metadata information or the template versioning and all. If you want, you can add those things here. Okay. Or you can edit it directly here and you can add it. But like I told you, for CloudFormation template, the only mandatory thing is resource. So let me copy this one and explain you what exactly is this, right? So I can take my Visual Studio Code. Just for understanding, I'll come back to this one because I have things to do here. So let me just close it. So I have opened the Visual Studio Code. Let me open a new file. I have a file in my local. Let me override this thing. Okay, so this is the example that I got from designer, right? This is the CloudFormation designer. Now what is it saying? That this is resources, and inside resources, if you see, like I told you, you can create bunch of S3 buckets, or you can create one S3 bucket and one AWS EC2, etc. So this is how you create. You have to make sure that the indentation is correct. Okay, so let me change this. For example, I can call this as S3 bucket. I can call this as EC2 instance. And every time you write a YAML, you have to make sure about the indentation. So, inside S3 bucket, I have this configuration. Inside EC2 instance, I have this configuration. Of course, I'm repeating one more time. These names can be anything. I can just call it as Abhishek as well. Abhishek 1, Abhishek 2. I can call anything. What matters is the type of it. This is just the name of the resource. Inside resources, you can put hundreds of resources. So for each resource, you are just giving a name. But for the easy purpose, we will put the names as is. So I can say S3 bucket. Here I can just say EC2 instance. And I can modify the instance accordingly. I can just say here EC2. Sorry. Here I can just say EC2 instance. Just for an example, okay? This is not the exact thing. So I'm just giving you example of what is defined here. So this is the thing that is defined, right? But what I want to do is I want to enhance it a bit, and I want to also define the name of the S3 bucket. So firstly, I'll override this one and I'll call it as S3 bucket. Okay. And inside the properties, what I can do is I can basically go to the AWS documentation. So inside the AWS documentation, let's search for S3 service. Okay, or search for S3 bucket. Where will you search for that? Inside the template reference. So go to the AWS CloudFormation documentation, search for template reference, this section, click on resource and property reference, and there you can search for your favorite service. In this case, we are creating S3 buckets, so search for simple storage service. Keep scrolling down. Simple storage service. Did you find that? Simple email service is there. Yeah, simple storage service. Perfect. Now you need to click on S3 bucket because that is the one that we are creating. Take help of this one. Now, like I told you, you will understand at this point of time. So this is your CloudFormation template. You don't want all of these things, right? You don't want all the parameters or the properties available here. What is the only thing that I want is the name of the bucket, let's say. So I can just copy this one from here, paste it in the designer, click on enter, give a tab and paste. Or what you can do is you can follow a specific indentation. So you can just give 3 spaces and you can put that. Okay. So I think there is one space more, 1, 2, 3. Okay. You can follow any specific indentation. If you give 2 spaces, give 2 spaces only. If you give a tab, give a tab. Okay. So you are defining bunch of parameters. So it has to go inside the parameters field. Whereas if it is a JSON, you will define it in a braces. Okay. For YAML, you will define it with indentation, similar to Python. What should be the bucket name in AWS S3? Basically, the bucket names have to be unique, right? So let me add it as, for example, demo dot AWS, for example, abhi.example.com. Okay. So now let us see if this resource, the CloudFormation template that we have created, is correct or wrong. So I'll take this to the CloudFormation templates, right? Let's go back. CFT. I don't want this designer anymore. So I'll go back to the CFT, create stack. And now let's say the template is ready. It will ask, do you have the template ready in Amazon S3 bucket? Like you can reference the templates from S3 bucket also. So like I told you, templates can be declarative, should be declarative, and they can be put in any sources like S3 buckets or Git repositories, right? Mostly people save them in S3 buckets because everything is inside the AWS. But it's not mandatory. You can keep it in your personal laptop as well. In my case, I've written it in my personal laptop in Visual Studio Code. Let's say I can click on this button, upload a template file, and let me copy the one that we have written. Okay. So I'm saving this in the downloads folder through the Visual Studio Code. And what I'll do is I'll upload the file downloads template.yaml. Now click on the next button. Provide a name for the stack. Let me call it as S3 bucket. Are there any parameters? I don't have any parameters. Click on the next button. Okay. Now just keep scrolling down, click on next button. And what you will do is click on submit. And you will notice that a bucket gets created. Okay, so this is the CloudFormation template stack where the resource creation is in progress. So user has initiated the resource creation. With which user did I initiate? With the user that I have logged in. Let's say you don't want to use root account and you want to use a specific IAM user. You can also use it when you are creating a stack. So it will take just a minute for the resource to be created. And this is where, like I told you, for example, if I'm only creating S3 bucket, then this entire process does not make sense because S3 bucket can be easily created through the CLI. If I'm creating EC2 instance plus S3 bucket plus VPC plus bunch of configuration, then CloudFormation template makes much more sense. Okay. But because you just started learning, do not go for complicated services. I'll show you the plugins that I use, which makes my life easy when I want to write CloudFormation template. And you can also use them and you can practice with the assignments that I'll give today. See here, the S3 bucket is created and the creation is complete, right? What does it say? Creation complete for S3 bucket. Let us see if the resource is created or not. Let me open AWS console in a new page. Now, if I go to S3 service, I should see a bucket. Perfect. Demo AWS Abhi example.com, and you will see that there is another bucket as well. So this is the bucket that CFT has automatically created for us. What is in this bucket? See, this bucket has the template that we have created. Like the cloud formation templates are automatically created randomly, like AWS provides a random name here, and it creates a bucket where all the cloud formation templates get saved. Okay, so AWS is storing by default all the cloud formation templates that we are writing for us. Perfect. Now let me delete this bucket. Okay, delete bucket. I'm not deleting the cloud formation template, but I'm deleting the bucket. Abhi.example.com. Okay, bucket is deleted, right? Let me refresh. And if we go back to the this one here, right? Now in the stacks, you have this thing available. I did not delete the cloud formation template, or I did not delete the stack that has created it. But what I've done is I have deleted, where is it? Sorry. Yeah, let me put this side. Yeah, so I have deleted the S3 bucket that is created through the cloud formation template. So what has happened here? This is there, but that got deleted. So what I can do right now is I can do couple of things. One is there is an option here called drifts. Okay, so I can check for the drift using detect stack drift. One good feature of AWS detect stack drift. Okay, so one good feature, like I told you, is AWS Cloud Formation can detect the drift. Okay, what does it mean? What do I mean by detect the drift? If you create some stack, if you create some resources through Cloud Formation, and if someone manually, like I did, if someone manually goes to that S3 bucket and deletes it or updates some configuration using the drift detection, you can understand what exactly is the change that is made. In this case, I have deleted. Okay, so if I go here and in the stack options, if I see view drift results. Okay, so what I did is view drift results. So I can see that, okay, status. What is the status? The status says that it is drifted. So here it is not showing what is the exact change in the drift because the bucket itself got deleted. Now what I'll show you, but the important point for the DevOps engineer is here it is showing the status as drifted. That means some configuration has changed from the time you have created the cloud formation template. Someone without updating the cloud formation template, they have manually updated your AWS configuration. Now let's take even a better example and let me show you. What I'll do first is I'll delete this entire thing as well. Okay, let me delete this. So I'm deleting the entire stack. Now I'll create an S3 bucket. Okay, here I've created S3 bucket with just the name, right? Now what I'll do is I will create S3 bucket with bucket configuration, like the bucket versioning enabled. And through manual entry, I'll go to the S3 service and I will disable the S3 versioning. Now let us see how does cloud formation drift detection behave in that case. Okay, so this is the resource S3 bucket. Inside the properties, I have name of the bucket. Now what I'll do is I'll go to the documentation. Every time I also have to go to documentation because there is no way that someone would refer or remember all of this configuration without looking into the AWS documentation. If they have to remember, then they are crazy because it makes no sense to remember all the 200 services or 50 services, 20 services at least with all of these parameters. It will not help you, right? So now I want to enable the bucket versioning. So I can just come here and search for versioning. Here it is, right? What is it saying? Versioning configuration. So how does the versioning configuration look like? enables multiple versions of objects. This is what I'm looking for. Click on the type version configuration and you will get an example. Okay, so what is the example here? So in the example, it is provided how to enable the versioning configuration. In my case, I want to enable it in the YAML format. So I'll just copy this one and paste it. How simple is it, right? What I'm just doing, I'm just going to the documentation and copy pasting it. Is it in the current indentation? Perfect. Inside the properties, I have this thing, and inside that I have the status enabled. How did I go to this page? I just went through the AWS documentation and search for the example. Each and every case example is available. Technically, I can even copy paste this one, but I want to show you how to write. So versioning configuration status enabled. Now let's use this cloud formation template. Okay. So I have updated, save this one. Now this is saved in the downloads folder. Let's go here, refresh, see what are the buckets that are available. There are only 2 buckets. Go to the cloud formation stack, create stack, template is ready. Yes, I have the template. Upload the template file, choose file, template.yaml, open it. Click on the next button. Provide the name of a stack. Let's say test S3 bucket drift detection, because that is what I want to demonstrate you. Click on next. Here you can define IAM rule that you want to use. If you don't want to use the root account, you can switch the IAM rule here, but make sure you grant all the permissions. Scroll down, click on submit. Now what should happen? A S3 bucket should be created for me, and the name of the S3 bucket should be this one, and versioning should be enabled in the S3 bucket, right? Let's see if that happens or not. Stack creation is in progress. S3 management console. Let's refresh. Till now it got created. Let us see here also. So if I refresh, it should reflect at this point of time. Creation complete. So S3 bucket is created. And if I go to this S3 bucket in the properties, I should see that the versioning, bucket versioning is enabled. Now let me manually change this. Okay. So I'll manually change this to suspend. Now the drift detection policy for me should show the exact change that is made. If it shows, then I'll say that yes, AWS Cloud Formation template does awesome job with drift detection. If not, then it is not working as expected. So let me refresh and let's go to this stack. Okay, how you need to do it? Go to the specific stack, click on the stacks, go to the stack, and in the actions, detect drift. So drift detection got initiated. Now let's wait for the drift detection for a while. Now you might be thinking, Abhishek, why this drift detection is very important? It is very, very important because you will not manage a single resource, right? As a DevOps engineer, sometimes you might want to manage bunch of resources. Okay, to manage this bunch of resources, what you will do sometimes is manually go there and see, okay, if it is created properly or not. When there are hundreds, thousands of resources, then without such techniques, you will not understand what did you create 15 days ago, 20 days ago, right? So for that reason, drift detection tells you that, hey, let me go here, click on this drift detection. If there is some change, then something or someone has messed it up. So I have to go and fix it. And in future, I should not give them permissions. Okay. So view drift results. What is the drift result? It says drifted. Now what is drifted? Click on this and see view drift details. See, it has clearly provided that in left the status is enabled and in right the status is suspended. So someone has manually made this configuration change. Perfect. So we got this change, what is modified. So next time you can make sure that who has access to this S3 bucket. If your S3 bucket has bucket logging enabled, let's say that you have enabled the bucket logging, then you can go and see who has modified it and you can warn them, you can send them notifications, you can escalate, or you can do revoke access for them on this S3 buckets itself. So this is about the drift detection, right? Now, one thing that I wanted to show you people is how do I write these cloud formation templates instead of using the help of the UI. What I did was either I use the AWS documentation. Without documentation, you cannot write it. But without using UI, okay, let's say I'm given some task and my manager asked me to write a bunch of cloud formation templates. So, okay, definitely I can go here. I can use the cloud formation create stack, and I can use the designer help, but it will take a lot of time. If I'm doing programmatically, I can do a little quick. So for that purpose, what you need to do is you need to have these two plugins that I'm going to talk about. Just go to the extension section and search for these two plugins. The first plugin that you will install is YAML. So if you click on the YAML, you will get this first specific thing. Like, this plugin is provided by Red Hat. This is a free plugin, and look at the number of downloads, right? This is the number of downloads, and it's a very good one. So it will give you all the information. Let's say you have messed up with the YAML indentation, you don't know how to write YAML files, then this YAML plugin by Red Hat will be of a super help for you. Okay, so using this, you can write YAML efficiently. And the second one is, I'll show you what happens if there is an error, how it will show me and all. And the second thing is a plugin called AWS Toolkit. Okay, so I'll try to put them in the description as well, the names of the Visual Studio plugins, so that you can also install them in your Visual Studio Code. For someone who does not have Visual Studio Code, you can install Visual Studio Code as well for free. Just search for Visual Studio Code. So you can download the Visual Studio Code for completely free. There is a community version and there is an enterprise edition as well. Make sure, depending upon your operating system, you install a community edition of Visual Studio Code. So I've installed both the plugins, AWS Toolkit and YAML. And AWS Toolkit has use cases beyond CloudFormation. You can use this simple Toolkit plugin to interact with AWS directly. You can do a bunch of things with it. I'll make a dedicated video related to AWS Toolkit probably after this 30-day session or something, because I use this extensively, and using this basically, the life of a developer or the life of DevOps engineer with AWS can be made very, very easy. So you can also read through this entire thing. The documentation is also very good, but still, if you don't understand, I'll also try to make a video and explain how I use this AWS Toolkit plugin. So now let's say I want to write the CloudFormation template. So how this toolkit and YAML plugins that I've installed help me is, okay, so definitely I'll go through the documentation. Let's say I want to create a S3 bucket. So I know that AWS template format version. See, I just search for AWS T and it gave me the options. So it says, do you want AWS template cloud formation template? Oh, sorry, template formation version. Okay. It gave me with the version completely. Then let's say that I want to add some description. So just search for D and it will give you the description, and you can put any description inside. Okay. This is my first cloud formation template for EC2 instance, for example. Okay, after that, let's say I don't want to write metadata, properties, anything. I can directly switch to resources. Just search for RES and it will give you. Now, inside the resources, let's say that I want to put the name of my resource. Like I told you, you can put any resource name. So let me say my EC2, sorry, EC2 instance colon, and you need to click on an enter. And see, I'm writing all of these things without even looking at the documentation. I did not even open AWS EC2 documentation, but I'm still able to write because I mastered this using the AWS toolkit and YAML. As you keep writing, you can also master. Let's say if you are beginning, then you can use the help of documentation. Just keep scrolling down and search for AWS EC2. This is in the alphabetical order. So where is EC, right? This is EC2. And I want to just create an instance. Okay. So in my case, I just want to create an instance. So inside the EC2, where is the instance thing? EC2 instance. I need to search for it. Just a second. EC2 instance. Yep, I got it. So these are the bunch of parameters, right? But before that, what I need to do is I need to know what is the type of it, right? So in my EC2 instance, either you can take help of this documentation or just type colon AWS and you'll get everything here as well. You don't even go to the documentation. So I know that for EC2 colon, see, what do you want to create in EC2? Do you want to create internet gateway? Do you want to create instance, EIP, anything? I want to create instance. Click on this one. Click on enter. Okay. Now inside EC2 instance, what are the properties that I want? So it is giving me some examples as well. Destination, permissions. Let's say I don't want anything of this. I just want EC2 instance with specific things like, let's say I want with image ID. Okay, I can copy this one here. Or let's say I want with I want to choose my own what are the mandatory things inside EC2 instance. As you learned about EC2, you know that the mandatory things are AMI, that is image ID, right? So I can pick image ID. Then what is the mandatory thing? Like important thing is key value. It is not mandatory, but you need to have key value, right? So this is the key name. I can copy this. Then what is the other important thing, right? The other important thing is you need to choose the security group. So see, security groups IDs or security groups, you can choose any from here. Perfect. I can copy this one and I can provide, sorry, I have copied it from the JSON because that is a JSON object, I know. I need to copy it from the YAML, right? Where is the security groups? Security groups. Perfect. Do you want security groups or do you want just one security group ID? It's up to you. So just copy it from here. I copied it from JSON, so that's why I copied them as objects. But ideally, this is enough. Image ID, key name, security groups, and if you want one security group, you can mention what are the other things. What is the instance type, right? So I can also search for instance type here. See, this is the parameter. This way, you can frame your CloudFormation template. If you have parameters, you can pass them. If you have conditions, but at this point of time, don't go till that point, right? Firstly, try to create some resources using CFT. Later, when you learn, when you master it, you can go with other options such as conditions, parameters. For now, do not go there. Okay. By the end of this series, you will understand much about AWS. Then you can go with all the parameters, all the options when you master AWS. But for now, learn this much about CloudFormation template on how to write the CloudFormation templates. And the assignment for today is to create EC2 instance using CloudFormation template. You will find the exact example in this documentation as well. So, but what I will recommend you is to try it by yourself by passing these things, or, by just downloading this AWS Toolkit YAML plugin, taking help of the documentation and designer. Try to do it by yourself. If you don't get it, then I will always be there to help you. You can put that in the comments, or you can put that and I'll make sometime video to let you know how to create entire stack, not just EC2 instance. But I think for the purpose of this video, we have learned enough about CloudFormation templates in the DevOps AWS Zero to Hero course. And I think you have got the knowledge on how to write the CloudFormation templates. One final thing is the difference between CloudFormation templates and Terraform. This is the question that people keep on asking me, and also in most of the interviews. The answer to it is very, very simple. So Terraform is basically used in a hybrid cloud environment or multi-cloud environment. Let's say your organization is on both AWS Azure. if your organization is on premises and AWS. In such cases, it is better to go with tools like Terraform because Terraform can handle multi-cloud. And definitely it is better to learn Terraform over CloudFormation templates because Terraform is the tool for future. Terraform is the tool. Of course, there are competitors to Terraform like Crossplane, and Crossplane has many advantages. I made a video on how Crossplane may take over Terraform as well. But for now, in the current market, Terraform is the one that's in boom because Crossplane is still a CNCF sandbox project and it is improving. For now, Terraform can support multiple clouds, and these days organizations are rapidly switching from one cloud to another cloud. They are switching from AWS to Azure. They have some workloads on AWS, some workloads on Azure. So it is better to learn Terraform more than CloudFormation templates. If your organization is only dedicated to CloudFormation templates and you want to learn it anyway by hook or crook, then it's fine. But if you want to learn only one thing, then go with Terraform, not with CloudFormation templates. If you know CloudFormation templates and if you want to answer in your interviews, then what you can say is, I'm using CloudFormation templates because my organization is only on AWS. Tomorrow, they will not make a decision to switch from AWS to Azure because they have been successfully working on AWS over last few years, and we are quite comfortable with AWS. Only then your interviewer will be satisfied that you know CloudFormation templates and not Terraform, right? So this is all about AWS CloudFormation, and the assignment is to create EC2 instance using the CloudFormation template. You can use ChatGPT, you can use this documentation. If you go through thoroughly this documentation, there is example here as well. And you can also use the CloudFormation template designer. So it's a very simple assignment. I've explained using S3 bucket, so I hope everyone will be able to do it. If not, try to take help of ChatGPT. But finally, I'll request everyone to do it so that you have confidence on CFT. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you found it useful. See you all in the next one. Take care. Bye.